Hi, this is Michael Veazey of Amazing FBA. Our sister podcast, the 10K Collective, is the world's newest e-commerce podcast. It's geared to the exact needs of 6, 7 and 8-figure Amazon and e-commerce business leaders. It's actionable but focused on how to scale your business and grow really fast for sale or long-term profit, not short-term hacks. We have in-depth talks with real e-commerce sellers and experts in industries like sourcing, team building, and managing cash. To find us, just search your podcast app for 10K Collective. That's 10K for kilo, COLLECTIVE. We are live on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Android, Stitcher, and Spotify, to name but a few of the apps we're rolling out to. Or you can go to 10kcollective.com for show notes or to listen online.
I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Hey there, welcome to Amazing FBA. This is your host, Michael Veazey, and welcome to the show. I've got a fairly simple, overarching concept to talk about today, but which is, like a lot of things, simple in theory. But the question is simply, are you doing it? And if not, what could you do to implement this? This is a strategic level marketing thought. It's based on a simple concept called KLT. I'll explain what that is in a second. It's created by Dan Kennedy, or at least articulated by him. Not new, but a very neat way of putting it. The KLT is not like a sort of sandwich or Kentucky Fried Chicken or something like that. It stands for know, like, and trust. And I want to talk about it in the context of Amazon. And the context I'm talking about this in is having been working with a client who's pretty new to Amazon. He's not even got a product live yet, but we are working on getting his first product live. And I think he's approaching it in an extremely positive way. And he's really getting to know his consumers and users before he even goes and finalizes the product itself, which is super smart. I'll talk about that properly in another episode. But I wanted to talk about know, like, trust today. So the know, like, trust thing is a simple sort of progression that consumers or clients, in this case consumers, go through before they're going to really buy from you. The first thing is they need to know you, or rather your product exists. And on Amazon, this is about ranking for specific keywords, and which implies smart keyword targeting, right? Which also implies knowing your consumer. So you've got to immediately reverse engineer from any keywords that people put in to know, who is using these keywords and what is their search intent. So there's certain intent behind some keywords. For example, if you're looking for a keyword that says silicone spatula black, then it's more of a specific intent than cookware, for example, or kitchenware, where people are probably researching what kind of thing they could buy in the former case. In the case of a black silicone spatula, they know what they want, so they're probably more likely to be buying one immediately. And there's lots of other things that go into that. But broadly speaking, you need to understand the consumer, you need to understand the keyword market, supply and demand for certain things. For example, black silicone spatula is incredibly saturated with cheap goods. So that would be a really lousy bit of keyword targeting, famously. Okay, so information is not short online. What you're trying to do is get attention. And to get this, you need to be relevant, first of all, and you need to appear as often as possible. There's a phrase in marketing: visibility equals credibility, right? So that means the more often people see your name around, the more they're going to start to feel this is a, quote, legitimate brand or a good product or something like that. It's a basic psychological thing. We're pattern recognition creatures, right? Human beings, as are many animals. And if you keep burning a pattern into somebody's head of this equals a good thing for this particular area, otherwise known as branding or positioning, then eventually it's very, very powerful. So if you keep showing people adverts of people in a social setting who want a soft drink drinking Coca-Cola, eventually people will go into a bar and order a Coke rather than, say, Sprite or 7-Up or some other kind of soft drink, right? It's very effective. So how does this work on Amazon? Well, it's much simpler in a way on Amazon. This means ranking organically for many relevant keywords, often long-tail ones. So if you're trying to sell, for example, what have we got in front of us here? Multivitamins. You want to have multivitamins for women multivitamins with minerals, general well-being, vitamins, etc. Right? So you get the idea. Also, you want to be appearing in sponsored ads, even if you are organically ranking for the keyword. Why on earth would you want to pay for that? Well, visibility. That's why. The more often you appear, yes, there are more sales opportunities, but also you are more likely to buy it in future Or today, having scrolled down the page to look through the organic rankings, if you've seen it appear in the sponsored results, because visibility equals credibility. It's kind of a basic psychological rule that's fairly robust. You might also want to appear in branded and headline ads, or whatever they call. They keep changing the name every 2 months. So I'm behind the times with that. But, basically you're going to appear on other people's listings as well. Lots of those things. So all of the above really is desirable, in my opinion. And of course, you've got to look at the cash flow and the return on investment. This is a big picture overview, but broadly speaking, all things being equal, you want to be visible. You want your products to be visible as frequently as possible to relevant users, right? What you don't want to be doing, of course, is targeting broad keywords that are no use to anyone. So if I'm, for example, a pregnant woman and I'm putting in multivitamins for pregnant women, what I definitively need to see is vitamins or some kind of supplements designed for people who are going through the menopause, because I'm pregnant. By definition, biologically, I ain't going through the menopause. So it's definitively the wrong thing to show me. And if you go plastering ads out on a broad match on the word multivitamins or something, or even multivitamins for menopause, I have no idea, by the way, whether that's a market, but I'm sure it's huge. And obviously, I'm not pregnant, guys, just to tell you, I'm a guy, so it can't happen. Before anyone gets to their keyboard, this being the internet and all, there's some special person on Facebook group will one day come back to me that, judging by the odd response we get. Most of the people in their Facebook group, by the way, say very intelligent things. If you want to be part of that conversation, amazingfba.com/FB, amazingfba.com/F for Freddie, B for Bertie. But I digress a bit. But the point being, do not plaster Amazon with broad match sponsored ads, because that's just a stupid idea. If you broad match stuff, you're going to end up showing your product to people who will never in a million years buy your product. And that's just wasted money. So I'm not talking about general and untargeted, but I am talking about targeted, but in multiple places, right? Off Amazon is another place where you want to be thinking about, not necessarily if you're in the early stages, but if you're developing your brand and your business, you can afford to take your eye a little bit off Amazon, in the sense only of driving traffic back to Amazon. So I'm not talking about anything complicated, running a Shopify store, which I think is an entirely different business model from an Amazon-based or a marketplace business, whether it's based on eBay or Amazon or whatever, Etsy. But visual media are really good. So you may choose to do Facebook ads or even Google retargeting, YouTube ads. Instagram ads are great value at the moment for the right kind of products. There's lots of different approaches, and it has to be affordable and produce an ROI. And definitely Amazon is 100% the best place to start and to focus. But it doesn't have to be where you finish. I mean, a lot of people find that Facebook ads are great to raise awareness, talking about know, like, and trust. Getting known before you have any Amazon ranking on Facebook through ads can be a very effective launch mechanism, although it's not normally affordable to keep doing that in most cases. The final kind of visibility, getting known thing, is simply that your product is your best advertising. So getting your product out into the hands of as many consumers as possible is really smart marketing. And the one way you can see things is to reduce your price of your product to the floor, particularly when we don't have reviews, and just see that as a marketing spend rather than a profit center. See it as a cost center, so marketing rather than product development, or whatever, however you organize the silos and the departments of your business. And let's face it, if you're in the early stages, you don't have real departments. But even if you're launching a ton of products when you have a very established business, I still would argue that instead of it being belonging in the product area, I think you should see low product pricing as a marketing spend, because the best thing you can do, assuming your product is good and looks good and functions well, is get it into the hands of as many consumers as possible. Then the other thing to do is this, that you just want to get more consumers to share the knowledge or the love of their product with others. And the more you can leverage that to getting known by others. And obviously brand ambassadors can be really, really helpful here. And that's an approach that one of the 10K Collective members has been taking over the last few months, with Facebook groups quite deliberately creating what they call brand ambassadors. And that seems to be a great success in helping to get their brand out there, but in a way that produces some kind of cash flow. It may not be profitable yet, but if you're getting fairly inexpensive products out there and consciously asking people to share that with others, that means your product gets known by products. which is a great sort of self-reinforcing feedback loop if you think about it. The more your product gets out there, the more it gets known. If you can make that viral, the more it gets known, the more people buy your product. And this is how products really take off, right? That's helped by the Amazon organic algorithm, of course, but you can do your own contribution to that yourself. So the next thing then, we've done the know, like, and trust thing. We talked about know. The next thing is like. People need to actually like your brand and your product. On Amazon, this means that if you're going to get ranked for a keyword, you better make sure that the image is good, that in the first instance, we've got to get the click. So on Amazon, this means good main image. It means good average review, which you can't control, but you can influence by, again, trying to make sure you're very careful in who you target and all the other stuff that goes into that. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty, as I'm trying to say. And you need a good price, right? So again, if you have a good image and no reviews, make sure your price is low. Don't be short-term about this, because the best thing you can do, we've already said, to get your product known is to get the product out into the hands of consumers and hopefully get them talking about it. So on Amazon, you've got to get the click by getting a good main image, average review, and a good price relative to the market, but relative to the numbers of reviews as well. And then to get people to like the products enough to actually buy it on the listing itself, you've got to have great images, not merely good images, fantastic images, including infographics and attractive lifestyle shots, including models, guys. Like, this is 2019. It's no good sticking your products in 5 different angles on a white background. Everybody in Shenzhen or in China, it's a sort of mini industry. Well, actually not mini, like anything in China, it's huge. But it's an industry in and of itself doing fairly ho-hum, standard, clean product photography now. It's not 2014. That is not enough. Photoshopping your vitamins, for example, into a bathroom or a gym is a start, but in the end, you need at least to have people in there. And if you're going to Photoshop, make sure it's done well. So don't mess about with this stuff. But broadly speaking, people need to like your brand and your products. That's really critical. In some areas, it's more important than others. If it's a very functionally driven, then the trust piece is more important. We'll come to that in a second. If it's more of a fashion or appearance-led thing, for example, fashion products, anything from handbags to clothing to jewelry, obviously the liking piece is even more critical. Don't forget, a big percentage of people these days are going to Google your brand as well. A lot of people will, particularly the younger demographics, will really want to see a nice Instagram presence. And a lot of people do a horrible job of this. I'm terrible with Instagram personally, so I don't claim to be the person who knows about this. But again, another member of the 10K Collective Mastermind in London has been working for months on fantastic Instagram marketing. And they are seeing that you can not only get a better conversion percentage, but also maintain higher price points by making sure your Instagram presence is absolutely fantastic. And again, this depends on the market, but for younger demographic, and particularly if it's appearance or fashion led, then that can be very, very powerful. So overall, you need to get people liking stuff, right? Then we come to the trust thing. Promotion online is epidemic, right? It's not just big, it's just a viral disease. And on Amazon, it's worse than anywhere else. And they make lots and lots of big promises. What is lacking is trust, particularly online these days. But online plus e-commerce equals very low trust in some cases, depending on people's experience with, widgets from China, to put it in a cliche. And I'm not saying all widgets from China are bad. There's some amazing things made in China, like my iPhone. This is made in China, famously. But there is a lack of trust, right? So the genius of Amazon is that they created a system of reviews by consumers that is trusted, sometimes wrongly, by consumers more than what merchants say. And that's probably rightly so, because, of course, I want to sell my widget. That's why I say stuff, right? Obviously, there is a degree of I want to help the consumer as well. Now, this brings me to the next point. There's another cliche, and so I'm trotting out the cliches today, but they're true. So they're useful ways for remembering things. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So in other words, a consumer doesn't really care if you are actually a legitimate expert in producing a certain type of product if they get the feeling that you are just out to rip them off for every penny they have. They actually need to get the feeling that you care about them. Now, a lot of people say it, but saying is not enough. I think you need to show, not say, right? And the best way is to articulate their issues very, very clearly, showing you understand them, right? And there's very limited space for this in the Amazon listing. You can do this. You can call out a particular user. For example, if you're targeting ladies over 50 with arthritis with some kind of supplement, you can clearly articulate that you understand them, that you're after those people, not only by the words you use, but the infographics can be geared to their particular problems and show the solutions and why your product helps them in a way other products or better than other products. And you can show the target person, if it's a lady over 50, for example, in your photographs. If you're trying to sell to a lady over 50, don't have a picture of a man in her 20s. It sounds obvious, but there's a great deal of people getting this really wrong on Amazon. I think this is a huge marketing opportunity. So, which brings us to another, is a message to market match thing, which is slightly different, but it's all related. I mean, the best thing you've got to do before you do any of this stuff is decide who you're helping with what particular problems, and then your keyword targeting. So if you get that right, then you just follow that through in your listing, and you will build more rapport with people than if you just show them something that's not really geared to them. And in the end, you cannot avoid the building of trust thing has to come from great products that really solve a particular problem really well. And that should eventually be reflected in the reviews. And the best way to do that is to co-develop your products with consumers. I mean, the more I talk to the really smart people in this game, and also the more I see, and I'm very grateful to my mentoring clients who are at the early stages, but who are willing to do this, they're getting great results. I mean, they're not necessarily at the stage of selling yet, but I can already tell you that the research they've done and the response they've got from potential users, it puts them streets ahead of people who are just whacking a plastic widget out there. And there's all the difference in the world between a plastic widget that you're using, a product focus that you just want to shove it out the door and say whatever you need to sell. People pick up on that. Consumers are highly, highly sophisticated now in certain ways. Right? Even if their Amazon reviews would not kind of imply they're great intellectuals exactly, they're sophisticated consumers. So they may not be able to articulate things, or they might misuse products and all the rest of the stuff we experience as Amazon sellers, right? Let's be honest, but they are attuned. They smell that self-interest. If all you want to do is flog widgets, they smell it. And the only way to get around that is to be cheap. And if you're cheap, you're not going to be profitable. And you normally produce a crap widget. And guess what? People will still complain about it. They will still say, this is bad, this is a rubbish widget, and give you a 1-star review. There is no particular relationship between how cheap a product is on Amazon and an expectation that it will not fall apart. Even though logic says that people should think that way, that isn't the case. So you should know that going in, right? So if you actually take the trouble to understand the consumer, really understand their needs, and develop a product, and I do mean develop these days, not just private label, but this can be so affordable. Sometimes I had a quote for one of my clients who's working on something, had a quote from Ryan Shaffett, the XQ manufacturing guy who we had on the 10K Collective podcast, which is geared to more advanced sellers. But actually, he gave him a quote for something that you could potentially be selling for $30, $40 quite realistically, of about $300 setup cost plus about $4 or $5 a unit, which is a really fantastic not overhead, the opposite. It's a fantastic multiplier of the cost. In other words, there's a great profit margin in there. And that's not necessarily always typical. I'm not saying you should approach Ryan expecting him to do magic all the time, but it often is the case that if you really look deeply into something and you co-develop something, it can be very affordable for you as the seller. But you've got to be willing to co-develop it with your users. And the way to do that is simply ask them what the problem is, articulate the problems to a product designer or figure that out yourself, and then get the widget made in a prototype, go and try it out with the user. They give you feedback, go back, do a second version, do a third version. By the time you got a third version, it's going to be a way better widget. And guess what? It's going to take time, money, and effort, but it's way, way, way more likely to pay off and be defensible than pure private labeling. And I'm not saying pure private labeling is dead, but it is kind of on the way out. So it's a great starting point for a lot of people. But what I'm discovering with working with clients who have no products on Amazon right from scratch is that actually the way in through customizable products is not as scary as it looks. It's actually proving easier and more affordable for my clients than I had anticipated. And that's a great thing. So whether you go that route or whether you purely private label, in the end, you have to think about the consumer and you have to make sure they know who you are, like you, and trust you. But I would start my process the opposite end and go, first of all, get to know the consumer, then develop a product that is perfect for their needs, and then you will automatically gain their trust once they have the product in their hands, because it will do what it says. So all you got to do then in marketing and product is make promises and deliver on the promises. When you understand the consumer, you know what promises to make, you know what matters to them, what doesn't matter to them. And when you're good at the product side, when you develop the right product, along with a great sourcing partner or partners, then you will have a product that delivers consistently on that product. And that is when you get great reviews. You win the trust through the Amazon review mechanism, which, for all its flaws and its manipulations that happen to it, is in essence a great thing for winning trust by actually delivering on promises in general, right? There are lots of exceptions. But then if you reverse engineer from the trust and liking, you can go into the marketing launch start, i.e. getting known because nobody knows you exist, knowing that the people who have used your product, maybe 5 people, have really given it the thumbs up and that it really does a job for a particular kind of consumer really, really well. And you can go into your marketing launch with a great feeling about yourself and your mission, because you know that you're going to do a great job for people. This is such a different feeling from just sticking a label on some plastic crappy widget, which is how I started with private labeling, not really particularly caring about it. I did my best to get good quality products. I kind of fiddled around with things that didn't matter that much to the consumers, but I didn't know at the time. I did my best. But the fact is that the method I was taught was just not very customer centric. It was product centric. And I just cannot say enough about how much better it feels for you, how much better it feels for the consumer, and how much better your business will be if you just focus on the end user experience and reverse engineer everything from that place. So in the end, earning trust is the rarer thing online, which is the foundation of great business. And it always has been, right? The great, you think of great Quaker business people. I think of those because I used to be a Quaker attendant many years ago. I'm not a Christian or a religiously affiliated guy, but they were very, very good business people, partly because they couldn't become doctors and lawyers and stuff because they refused to swear in the Bible. I'm not getting involved whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, right? But the fact is, therefore, they had to find a way to make a living. And one of the reasons that I understand that they were good business people and successful, like Cadbury's, Rowntree's, the chocolate makers, or Quaker Oats, or various other businesses like that, is simply that they had this tradition. They didn't swear in the Bible. They said, my word is my bond, i.e. when they said they would do something, they did it. And if they said they'd done something, it was true. So honesty and integrity build trust. Like, that's flipping obvious, but it's easy to say. But how many people don't do that? How many people break that online? And if you do the opposite, you will get something that's actually a very business-like, saleable commodity. Trust. It's actually quite rare online. So really the most important bit out of this, everyone wants to be known. They want their product to be liked. But actually, I'm telling you, trust is the absolute most important thing you can have. And if you have that, you have a solid basis for business and you'll do well. So in the end, I think a lot of business, good business, boils down to some pretty simple, robust things that are not based on technology or the algorithm. On the contrary, the better the Amazon algorithm gets at sussing this stuff out and serving consumers and giving what they really want, the more relevant this is going to be relative to the technical skills of trying to fool the algorithm. And I'm not saying you should be quixotic and overly puritanical. I mean, do what you need to do to get known and to ranked in an area where there are quite a lot of black hat sellers. I mean, sure, do white hat, grey hat, or black hat as you see fit. But I'm telling you that in the end, whatever your relationship with the Amazon algorithm is one thing, but the relationship with consumers that matters is trust. That is it. So if you take nothing else from the last few podcasts, I hope this is valuable, because this is not an idealistic rant. This is actually good business. And guess what? Being the good guy in good business long term, they absolutely go together. There's not a conflict. And if you think there is, that's because you're being driven by anxiety and short term thinking, in my humble opinion. Thanks for listening.